So in this game, we're going to be talking about Infiltration on Avalanche. This is one of the maps that this strategy works best on, and this game shows really well how it's not really that hard to get into the enemy base. Like I assume some of you watching video 3 were like, if I can't even get a kill, how am I supposed to get into the enemy base? But this map is a great example for how easy it can actually be, and that's because of the Silk Road, which is what I'm going to call the route from portal to portal, because it has 4 bubbles on it, and 2 invises, and 2 rockets. So it can actually be pretty easy to go from point A to point B. Like if you're the first one down there, or if you just rushed invis, you should help get the laser. But you can do that safely, or you can not do it and just take the invis and kind of go wide and just go straight to the enemy base. And most times you won't get caught doing that. So pretty much if you get your invis, congratulations, you're inside the enemy base. And obviously that's true at any point of the game. And you can have the rocket and bubbles. You have a chance to pick up 3 bubble shields before you try and make a break for their portal. So it's pretty common if you just try to do this all game. Eventually the enemy team is going to leave an opening for you. So that's not what I do at the start here. I'm always going snipe on this map, and I usually play the keyhole, just because I think it's the most important part of the map. But we're going to see in this game that I get pieced up a couple times in the keyhole, so it becomes clear to me that they might have a couple players I need to worry about, and that I'm having some trouble handling. So at that point I decided to try Infiltration, and we're going to see that even though they had a couple decent players, I was able to kind of circumvent that and get a lot of kills that didn't involve them. So a few of the things that make this a good strategy on this map are that you can whore several things in their base. Their rocket, their bubble, their regen, and their portal. Anytime you want, you can just sit behind their portal, and you want to be careful not to sit in the portal, because when they try to go through, it'll be obvious that it's blocked. But you can sit behind it and assassinate people when they come through. You have to be careful going back and forth too much, because eventually someone's going to try and do that to you. But I usually go back and forth a lot anyways. So yeah, when you're whoring all 4 of those things, you can get pretty difficult to kill. And then there are a lot of spawns on this map that you can sit in the top of the enemy base and get pretty easy kills. So let's go. So yeah, that's a good shot. So died twice. I'm gonna try it a 3rd time. So yeah, things aren't going very well. I'm not sure what my reasoning was there for going bottom key, but it was probably to check on the laser, and because I thought their sniper might be up high somewhere and was sitting back, and I didn't really want to push through there. So yeah, obviously things aren't going very well so far, but you never teabag the goat. So we'll see that pretty much the only two ways I can die are somebody camping the portal or getting sniped while I'm grabbing their rocket. That's one that you have to be really careful about. You're pretty vulnerable to their sniper while you're grabbing the rocket, but hopefully a lot of times you have a bubble shield. So even if you get shot, you can drop that, or hopefully your team is distracting them enough, or just has the enemy keyhole, and hopefully they're not playing with mics, which is usually the case. But a lot of times, even when teams are mic'd up, this works pretty well, because as you can see, I have 6 rockets, and the interior of the space is pretty complicated, so you're still pretty hard to kill, or you're at least going to get several kills before you die. And then going through the portal, I like to not move at first, so I don't show up on radar, but maybe you show up a little bit when you go through anyways, or maybe if you crouched through you wouldn't show up at all. And then sometimes I try to go through fast and jump, and hopefully come out of the portal far enough that I don't get assassinated. And like how you should do that to not get assassinated, and where you should sit behind the portal to assassinate people. Those things you might have to test on your own, because I'm not really sure the best way to do some of those things, because I actually don't do this very often. And sometimes if you're sitting behind the portal, you can sit too far behind it, and people will come out and you can't hit them. So yeah, you'll have to test some of those things on your own. The rocket spawns pretty fast on this map. I don't know what the timer is, so that would be something good to know. But I'm usually going back and forth a lot anyways, because the enemy spawns over there, and that's an easy place to get kills. So I'm not just going over there to check the rocket. And I would say the bubble is more important. If I had to choose between the bubble or the regen, I would pick the bubble when I'm doing this, because I have the rocket, and you're pretty safe with the bubble and the rocket. And because of the sniper threat, if I just have a regen and I get caught out there, I'm more likely to die than if I have a bubble. So you can see, I pretty quickly went from having like no kills to having 10, and I'm not sure how this rocket didn't hurt this guy more. So a couple things. If you're worried about going through the portal too much, you can just camp this side of the portal and just keep picking up their rocket, and people will probably feed you kills. If your team is dominating, they might force spawns that reduce the number of kills you'll get, because the enemy team won't be spawning around the base on the ground. So this can actually work a little bit better if your team isn't pushed in on their base. And then when you have a bubble like this, you want to push out and kill that guy before he gets too close to you. If you let him push all the way up to the bubble, things are going to get tricky. So there I wanted to poke out and kill him before he gets too close. And then the last thing, things were getting a little dicey in the base, but they went okay. And you should have seen me at least once get some elevation in the base while I was waiting at the portal. And that's obviously what you want to do with the rocket. And there's a lot of places in that base you can increase your elevation. And I would say the third way that you're going to die doing this is letting the enemy get their rocket. So that's another reason I check this a lot and I go back and forth a lot. So you can see this guy finally got me by sitting behind the portal with a rocket. So I actually didn't check the rocket spawn enough. Or this is just a timer that I should keep track of. But again, I just don't really do this that often because I'm usually playing the keyhole. But yeah, so I went from having almost no kills to having 24 kills. But my team seemed to pick it up too. Like I wasn't really helping in the keyhole at all. And they started holding it down. But again, there's net benefits to your team of being this disruptive. It forces their team to move backwards and to turn their backs to your team. They're not getting their rocket. There's some intangible benefits like that, especially on this map. If you're sitting in the top of their base and being a nuisance to the keyhole and to the spawns there, which I wasn't doing that here, but sometimes it'll play out more that way. But it seems like people spawn away from this base a lot now. Like the spawns around the base are not as common as they used to be. But yeah, so there's some intangible benefits there. And then just the last thing I'll say is there's more ways to get into the base than the Silk Road. The Silk Road is probably the best because again there's 4 bubbles, 2 invises, and 2 rockets. But if your team is holding down the enemy keyhole, a lot of times you can just walk into the base from the catwalk and just push in the front that way, and then you're in the same situation. Or sometimes you can even just take a vehicle and drive it straight to their portal and get away with it. So yeah, started off the game like 0-3 and then ended up plus 25. And those guys were playing the middle pretty tough, and that sniper hit a really good shot on me. So that's one of the things that makes Infiltration really effective, because you don't have to be the best player in the game to pull it off. Once you're established in their base, you have every advantage. Things did get a little dicey for me in their base there a couple times. A couple of their players did a pretty good job of trying to get me out of there, at least a couple times. But if you do everything right, you shouldn't die. This is probably the best map for this strategy, but it works pretty well on Standoff and Valhalla too. And at some point, we'll take a look at some examples on those maps. See you then.